I admit, I am perhaps overly technical about some things. Being a character in a science fiction series perhaps brings that out in me. Anyway, the next morning, Samus wasn't sure where she was, / Then she remembered that she was at Ridley's house. Then she noticed that she was in Ridley's bed. Then she noticed that she was naked. Ah! Samus woke up the whole neighborhood. Departing from the script, that is an impressive feat, me. Samus, is something wrong? Ridley noticed as he woke up. Oh no! He fearfully exclaimed. Ridley, what if... Samus worried. Ridley was cooler and didn't lose his cool. It's okay. My friend told me that it can't happen the first time, so never worry. It's okay, Ridley ascertained. Okay. Samus tried to convince herself. After all, who doesn't think it could happen after just one time? Unfortunately, they were dead wrong. Again, the number 1 appears 120 times. If you wish to hear it, Ridley, then when I upload this video on YouTube, kindly rewind to the part where I just read out the number 1 120 times, and listen to that again, before returning to this section. Now we have arrived at a place, one of your old haunts, Ridley. Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha. Yes, indeed. Aye, the old ghost ship. I remember this old ship well, so I do. I battened down plenty of hatches in here in my day.
Yes, unfortunately, Ridley, as of the time of this game, it became a ghost ship. And I mean that in the most literal sense possible. This abandoned old ship is haunted by these very strange globs of greenness with several heads in them. Is this a Japanese thing, Ridley? These don't look like any kind of ghost of which I have heard.
What are you talking about, Samus? That's me old mateys there. That be Bob. There's Susan, Jenkins, Cuthbertson, Mr. Spickles Pottles.
I see. Well, anyway. The wrecked ship, as it's known, is considered one of the main worlds in the game, despite the fact I have arrived at the boss, Phantoon, in 2 minutes. Phantoon is apparently also a ghost, or something, I don't know. Maybe if I wheeled out the enclosed instruction book, I would get an answer. All I do know is that while he does look rather menacing, with his one bleeding eye, he also looks like he's wearing some manner of football helmet.
Haha, I never noticed that before.
Yes, he also shoots out these blue, flaming ghosts, which I do know are some manner of Japanese thing. Blue flames are associated with ghosts, or spirits, are associated with spirits in some way in Japan. I suppose I should know more about this sort of thing, considering I probably am supposed to be Japanese. Although I am not from Earth. So, I don't know what to tell you there. Perhaps some Japanese people left Earth and traveled to whatever planet it was that I was born on. I don't know. This ghost ship is quite creepy. It almost makes me frightened, but no. I am frightened of nothing. Wait, what? But no. It's nothing, Ridley. I just experienced a strange, sharp, sudden sensation when I turned to look at you as I was saying that. But no, the feeling has subsided. I assume it was nothing. Unfortunately, defeating Phantoon, for no clearly conveyed reason, has caused the ship to regain power, and the ship regaining power has also caused all the ghosts to stop appearing. What does this mean? Do electricity supplies result in exorcisms? That is what I am taking away from this event. With the electricity returned, these robot things are back in operation as well. Your robots, Ridley, are back in operation. Your 1950s B-movie looking robots, whose only apparent function seems to be to walk extremely slowly, left and right. They have no arms, only legs. And they do not appear as though they have any conceivable possible function other than walking left and right. Why, Ridley? Why?
You're not going to get an answer from me. I didn't build these things. They get bought in from H5433585755850000000000009.
No, you're mistaken, Ridley. They get bought in from planet B5547532555.
Samus, you're thinking of those beige robots. These are tan.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Ridley. I should not have questioned you. I can shoot these robots into the spike pits, where they are not hindered at all, which is quite fortunate. Well, actually, not really. It doesn't matter to me what happens to these robots that would make that gorilla with a goldfish bowl on his head from Robot Monster look realistic. Or whatever that movie's name is. Say what you want about the enemies in my games. At least they don't look like they were made out of cardboard on a $2 budget. At least they're not made up of goldfish bowls and gorilla costumes. At least they're not described as looking like flying battleships, only for it to appear on screen and look like something that took a wrong turn on Sesame Street. Metroid Fusion. In that game, I had a computer telling me what to do. Unlike in this game here, in which I am given free reign of the planet to go anywhere I want, and break the game anywhere I can. In Metroid Fusion, not only was I told what to do and where to go at any given point in time, but quite often, the computer would block me from going to areas that by all rights I should be able to access, for no reason other than because the game did not want me to go there. People dislike this apparently, even though really, it seems to me that I am essentially constrained anyway in where I can and can't go, until I obtain power-ups that gradually allow me to uncover new areas to access over the course of the game. I suppose the only real difference is that Super Metroid gave the illusion that the player was entirely free to go where they wanted. It just so happens that that was not an illusion, because again, the game is so atrociously programmed that you can do practically anything you want at any time. Although in Metroid Fusion, there was a section where it was indeed possible to do something so ridiculously convoluted and impossible to figure out that you could escape an area that the game thought it had trapped you in. However, even this was picked up on by the programmers, and so if you performed the action and returned to the computer room that you were not supposed to be able to access, you would get a secret cutscene, and then the game would still force you to go where it wanted you to go. So yes, Metroid Fusion really thought of everything. I suppose the other game in which my actions were constrained by external forces would be the most recent one. Adam showed up again, despite being dead. That's not a spoiler, by the way, Ridley, because by that point in the series, the players, anybody who had played Metroid Fusion, would know he was already dead. There were several other people in that game with whom I interacted. I believe I was able to stave off my natural monotonous voice for long enough for them not to think that I was incapable of social interaction. I don't have much to say about that game, other than I seem to recall that the blue suit thing that I apparently now wear under this suit had high heels.
High heels?
That's right, Ridley. As I said earlier, do not question my fashion sense. I personally asked Nintendo to add those to the design. I felt without them, the suit looked somewhat bland. My advice obviously had some effect, because they chose to include the suit in Super Smash Bros., a series which I somehow managed to be in from the start, even though at the time of Super Smash Bros.' release, I had done nothing for about 6 years. Then again, the more likely reason for the 8 or so year hiatus of my series that happened since this game is probably because I had officially wiped out all the Metroids by the end of this game. Spoilers. So, there was not too much more to be done with a series called Metroid. I always thought that those green things on the ceiling had faces on the top, or at least eyes. But I think again, my mind just misinterpreted the way they were supposed to appear. I think Nintendo intended me to interpret the image in a different way. Those things had names in the enclosed instruction book, the gargantuan, oversized instruction book, enclosed instruction book that came with this game originally, but I have forgotten the name. However, I do have the enclosed instruction book somewhere close to hand. Perhaps I will bring the thing out at some point and read it on my scanner, for our entertainment, Ridley.
I'd be perfectly happy with you not doing that.
I see. And yet another example of a curiosity of old games. In this room I have to grapple over to this mysterious Chozo statue that is standing for no clear reason. If I roll into a ball and then wait for an unreasonably long period of time in its hand, it will carry me downstairs. Was this easy to figure out? I don't know. Perhaps it was. Personally, I used the enclosed instruction book, so I had no recourse for using my own initiative in this game. Despite my series having fairly few games, with relatively little story across the games, there are nevertheless a lot of details that seem to be rather unclear from the games themselves, such as my origins. Apparently, I was raised by a bunch of bird-like things which those statues are modeled after, called Chozo, who lived somewhere on some planet, and a planet on which I was raised for some reason. Despite none of my games, to my knowledge, ever explicitly stating this. Maybe in the enclosed instruction book of one of them, more detail was given on this. Or maybe in Japan, I understand, there was some manner of comic, or rather, they are called mangas, which perhaps went into this in more detail. I don't know. I now have my final suit of the game. Stop laughing, Ridley. Although this color scheme does not quite complement my green visor as well as the orange one, I still consider it to be a respectable fashion statement of its own right. So shut your face, you skullduggerous skeleton.
I'll kill all your bounty hunting beams.
Ha 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 ha. Ridley. I wish, before I proceed much further, Ridley, to return to the topic of the enclosed instruction book. which I briefly brought up as a reference for the ridiculous name I gave the young version of Kraid. The enclosed instruction book to which I refer was in fact not a normal instruction book of its era, but rather a massive strategy guide, so large that they had to make the box 4 times the size of a normal Super Nintendo box. I don't know why they chose to do this, but they did. The strategy guide was extremely useful, having large maps which I could follow. The strategy guide that I discussed earlier. To be frank, I cannot be bothered to fish out the enclosed instruction book that I described earlier. I will instead, however, read this copy of the original small instruction book I found online. I would like to recount for you, for no particular reason, the names of some of the creatures that I encounter over the course of this adventure. Those flying turtles from Crateria are called Rippers. Even though they perform no action of any sort that could even remotely be described as ripping. The guide says the armor of these flying creatures is so strong that standard beams cannot beat them. The name of the green enemy that waits on the roof, on the ceiling, and then flies down at me is Scree. These creatures hang down from ceilings and drop as intruders approach. Geemer. Geemers crawl on floors and walls. That was quite an elaborate description, Nintendo. If this were Metroid Prime, I suspect my scanner probably would have given me several paragraphs of useless text to describe this extremely simple, basic enemy. Waver. Wavers fly in a wave pattern. Rio. These creatures have sharp claws and can withstand several hits. Cack-attack. These walking cacti launch needles as a defensive measure. Sidehopper. Sidehoppers pounce on intruders with powerful legs. As a side note, this is true, and Sidehopper is indeed a fitting name for these creatures, given that in a two-dimensional game such as this, they have nowhere to hop but to the sides. Fire Flea. These enemies emit light. If you blast them, the surrounding area will become darker. This is correct. Spore Spawn. This was the Conker we met earlier. This creature was genetically engineered by the space pirates. Is that so, Ridley?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Why did you do that?
You know what it was, actually? I just remembered. You were right. Mother Brain just wanted to play Conkers.
Yet another mystery solved. We are just wrapping up these mysteries like Scooby-Doo wraps up crimes involving people who dress up as ridiculous ghosts and somehow convince people that they're genuine. Its weak point is its core, which is protected by the plant's hard shell. That is also true. The hard shell it chooses, for no evolutionarily advantageous reason, to open up and let me shoot the weak point inside. Kraid. The giant lizard of Brinstar attacks Samus with thorny projectiles and spits spheres out of its mouth. I find it interesting that the instruction manual was self-aware enough to just call them spheres, rather than something like energy globules or some generic science fiction term. No weapons, beams, missiles, or bombs have any effect on its body. The creature's weak point is unknown. Dragons. These enemies live in lava and spit out fireballs. So they just called them dragons. Okay. Magdolites. Magdolites have the power to turn into magma and can change shape at will. They attack by tossing lava. Crocomire. This huge creature has sticky skin and spits plasma balls. When adventurers attempt to fight the Crocomire, it becomes angrier with every blow. In other words, it walks backwards slightly with every blow. Yes. Multiviola. The fiery multiviolas bounce off walls and randomly fly in the face of intruders. I would like to mention while reading these names that the same person who named all these things, the bizarreness of these names very much reminds me of the enemy names in The Legend of Zelda. Nintendo just can't seem to stop themselves from coming up with bizarre names to give to enemies that never really needed names in the first place. But that's the 90s for you. This sort of stuff happened. I miss those days. They didn't need a reason. It was just fun, I suppose. Garuta. This enemy defends itself by a heat-resistant shell and attacks ceaselessly with two large claws. Ridley. It's you. Ridley headed the mission to the space colony and stole the Metroid hatchling. It whips out at enemies with its long tail and spits fire while flying through the air. Ridley. Although the instruction manual claims you headed the mission to the space colony, you were the only one that was there. Skullterra. These creatures are fish, with bony frames and joints that rotate mechanically. Mocktroids. Mocktroids are the space pirates' first attempt at Metroid clones. These creatures, unlike the real Metroids, are easy to defeat. Upon reading the name of the next enemy, I just attempted to maneuver my hand to my forehead. Unfortunately, I briefly forgot that my space helmet was in the way. Ouch! The hard-shelled ouches keep enemies away with sharp spikes and burrow into the sand when they sense danger. Ever. These creatures fire thorny bullets from their tails. Dragon. The Dragon has an armor like hard shell, which gives it a lot of defensive strength. Covern. These souls of shipwrecked creatures turn into evil spirits that wrap themselves around intruders. Well, that was the ghost we encountered on the wrecked ship. Although they don't wrap themselves around anything, they simply, like every other enemy in this game, hurt me when I touch them. Work robots. These robots were built by ancient man to service the inside of the ship. Since the crash, they have gone completely haywire. I was really hoping the description of this thing would explain exactly what use they could possibly be, exactly what kind of work these armless creatures could possibly serve, could possibly fulfill, could possibly accomplish. But alas, it seems my suspicions are confirmed that Nintendo themselves did not think of a reason. Phantoon. The ghost of the ship taps into the vicious brain waves of the mother brain and attacks adventurers with deadly plasma. Space pirates, Zibisians. These feared aliens are known as the Scourge of the Galaxy. They are known for stealing galactic trading ships and leaving the crew stranded in space. What does that mean? They just literally leave their bodies in the middle of space. I suppose that is what that means. If they take their ship away, that's quite frightening, really. Space pirates, key hunters. These creatures are pirates from another galactic system who helped rebuild Zebes. When they lose their wings, they spit powerful acid. I wonder how many people were aware that the key hunters from the Metroid High School story were actually these things, but misspelled. I noticed that the short version of the enclosed instruction manual informs the reader that there are different endings depending on how quickly the game is completed. This is a fact which, to my recollection, the 120-page or so strategy guide neglected to say at any point. Nice job, guys. It is said that Metroids are life forms created by an ancient civilization. Metroids engulf living creatures and absorb their energy. They are very intelligent and quick to reproduce. Interesting. I do not recall hearing this part about them being created by an ancient civilization before. That is news to me. Perhaps Nintendo themselves forgot this fact at some point. Or I'm just not aware that this has been elaborated on further in subsequent games. It had been some weeks, and Samus was at Helen's house. Mandy and 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006 were there too. It was the morning, and Samus was feeling a little sick. The problem was, everyone else was healthy in her friends and family, so it wasn't likely the cold or the cholera. Something was up, and Helen was about ready to explode. "Samus, I think we have an emergency," Helen imploded. Okay, calm down," Mandy controlled. She was the kind of girls who could keep their cool in a disaster. "Samus, we are all worried. But there's only one weight, oh be sure," implied Mandy. Samus looked at her feet. "But where do I get one on those?" Samus speculated. 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006 broke the silence. "I have one," 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006 made known. She reached in her black handbag and picked up a small wrapper with something in it. Everyone was shrouded in disbelief. 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006. "Why do you have a pregnancy test in your pocket?" Helen posed. Everyone, except 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006, thought it was a reasonable question. 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006 rolled her eyes. "Dude, I have a life, you know." 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006 controversially declared. "Okay then," Helen calmed down. "The only way to be safe is well. Samus, are you ready?" Helen pried. "We've arrived in Meridia," which, for some reason, gives me quite possibly the most unsettling atmosphere out of all of the worlds in this game, even more than the haunted ship. I don't know what it is about this place. The music. The strange, ethereal water effects. I get the sense that something massive and frightful could leap in from the corners at any moment and do something scary. But that does not happen until the boss, which does manage to instill such a sense of unease in me, even to this day. Maybe it's because the image of this thing in the enclosed instruction book, for some reason, always seemed rather frightening to me, for reasons I don't understand. Maybe I was just afraid of that thing appearing in the middle of the night, as I lay in bed, for no rational reason because it's a sea creature, but well, that's nightmares for you. Have you ever had any nightmares, Ridley?
None that I am inclined to talk about.
Oh. Sounds to me like you're admitting you have had them. I'd like to hear those.
Well, you won't.
I'll tell you one of mine. I had a nightmare once where they were making a Metroid movie, and they asked me to star.
What was wrong with that?
Because, Ridley, you're obviously not familiar with something known as Hollywood, because they were asking me to spend 90% of the film in that ridiculous bathing suit that I have on in most of these games' special endings. Well, it was just a dream. That will never happen. Samus was not ready, but it was the only way she could be safe. Okay, Samus decided, it's time. The number 120 times. Samus was in Helen's bathroom. She couldn't believe this was happening, that if... No, she wasn't going to think about it. Samus tried to calm down, but it was too hard. Only 2 minutes. 1 minute. Samus held her breath and took a look. Oh no. No. Samus distrusted. Say it ain't so. The number 120 times. Somewhere in the town, a phone was ringing. It was Ridley's cell phone. Ridley picked it up. Hello? Ridley answered. He was confused because on the other end of the phone, there was silence. Then he heard Samus say 4 words that would change her life. Ridley, I'm pregnant. That is the end of Chapter 3. The story took a shocking swerve, although it appears Ridley somehow, you did, considering the strong reaction you had to the portion of the story leading up to whatever it was that happened over the course of the night. I hope the story further elucidates, at a later chapter, what happened here, because I am not sure. I was very confused by the events of this chapter. Somehow I became pregnant. I don't understand why this happened, however. Perhaps over the course of the night, that was skipped over. Well, there are some mysteries forming here. Mysteries to the bottom of which I am determined to get. I am afraid, Ridley, that although I am sure you were just about to tell me to stop reading this story, I am going to ignore you and continue reading regardless. I must know how this saga ends. I am invested in this story and its characters, namely me and you and Helen and Tio Juan, and especially 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006. Ridley could not believe it. In fact, he originally suspected conspiracy, but it was much more than he could expect. He'd bitten off far too much to chew, and now no conspiracy could explain the situation he's landed himself in. Or could it? The number 1 repeated 120 times. Samus was at Dr. Banis's office to have her baby checked. She was worried because she had never been pregnant before. Ridley had told her not to worry and that it would all work out. But Samus couldn't help but feel that Ridley was hiding something from her. Little did she know that there was a surprise on the horizon. Samus, there is a problem, Dr. Banis addressed. Samus was not amused. What is it? Samus cautiously gathered. It seems that there was a repercussion of your sins. Dr. Banis scolded. Samus was shocked by the lack of religious toleration in the establishment. What seems to be the issue? Samus countered as she narrows her eyes. I don't know how to say this, but you've got... Samus held her breath and could not believe what she heard next. It was a tragedy in the making, and she was the protagonist. The cholera. The number 120 times. Samus fell on her bed and was broken into tears. It was impossible. It was impractical. There was no way it could have happened, but it did. Samus was crying because her life was ruined by the cholera, but there was another reason. Because Ridley had to have gotten the cholera from someone else, and Ridley had never mentioned anything of the sort. It was a mystery, and Samus was trying to find out. The number 120 times. Around that time, Helen decided to give her friend a call. She was worried because Samus had just experienced her first pregnancy exam, and it was time to hear the results. Samus' phone rang, and she picked it up. Hello? She inquired the person on the receiving line. Samus, how did it go? Helen grilled her girlfriend. Helen, there was a surprise, Samus tearfully made known to her peer. Is it a good surprise? Helen hoped for the best. Samus paused to catch her cool and composure. Helen, I have the cholera, she declared with a vengeance. Ah! Exclaimed Helen with a scream of the gods. It couldn't be, but then, maybe. Samus, there might be something you should know. 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006. She has the cholera too. Samus hung up the phone. She was in disbelief. It made sense, but it couldn't be true. It was too much of a conspiracy for the truth. Or was it? The number 120 times. For the third time a phone had rang. Ridley cautiously picked it up, not knowing the full life consequences on the other end. It was Samus. She was disapproving. Ridley? Have you had an affair with 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006? Samus scorned. Ridley was backed into a corner. It was time for this conspiracy to be brought to an end. Samus, a long time ago, before you and I were a pair. 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006, and I. Well, Samus was embarrassed. Ridley, you should have told me. Now I have the cholera. I can't believe you. Side-splitted Samus. I was too much to handle. Departing from the script, I believe I was too much to handle was not spoken by a character. I believe what the author was getting across, since in case you have forgotten Ridley, the author of this tale is 111 Samus Ridley Forever 2006, was that she herself was too much to handle. Although I don't know again in what context exactly. Samus, I, started Ridley, before he was cut off by his scorned girlfriend. Save it, Samus delivered with dark passion. I need time. Time.
Samus, please!
You cannot stop me now, Ridley. I must know what happens next. Chapter 5. The Dark Surprise. Time. 3 weeks had passed since the cholera conspiracy, and for Samus it was just the beginning. Dark lights had confused her soul, and it was a burden that she could not comprehend. She sat in her bed grasping at the straws that had come loose, straws that poisoned the water of life, lightness, darkness. Samus could not understand the feelings that had gripped her apart over the 3 weeks. Forces were turning her away, but it was a force that could not be explained with the words. Grip was squeezing her like a lemon, the real kind. It was like a dream, only this time it was for real, fake, reality. It sat acting like a chainsaw, and she could not go back to Ridley. Not now, not like the past. She knew she still was loved, but there was something that was impossible to ever go back. Temporary. Longevity. All of a sudden, Samus screamed. She was losing control over her conscience, and there was a new force rising. It was like Samus, only it was Dark Samus instead. She could barely fight to take over her actions, and she was becoming weird. It was impossible to know what would happen next, until it happened. This was her cholera, but soon she knew it could not contain confession, possession, obsession. The number 1, repeated 120 times. Ridley knew there was a crisis, and he was meeting at his house. There also was Ted, Robbie, Tio Juan, and Smiley, the new kid. The tension was emergency, and it was about to implode. What am I going to do? Detonated Ridley. Dude, calm down. It's all cool. Smiley conformed. I'm not so sure that's a great assuage. Ted confusingly used vocabulary that not everyone knew. Okay, everyone. We need not to panic, and we need to think of a solution, Tio Juan dictated. Everyone was quiet, and they all thought about the problem. It was quiet conundrum, and there was not a solution that everyone could think of. Samus was not forgiving, and especially she was acting strange, like she was becoming dark. Ridley did not like to think about this, and he didn't. Little did he know that this was much more to think than he thought. If I was you, I'd apologize to the girl and say I'm sorry, Smiley permitted cool. People agreed with this, but Ridley was not so cleverly amused. But when would I do? Ridley contended. Tomorrow, everyone consensused, and it was agreed. But little did the meeting know that there was a new darkness on the horizon. Darkness. The number 120 times. It was a day at Metroid High School, and things were bright and sunny. Departing from the script, I had forgotten that this story took place in a high school. I became so immersed in my and your plight, Ridley. I had forgotten the school existed, that this was fictional. It was like the day that Ridley asked out Samus, but it was not that day ago. Ridley was ready to apologize, but something was strange. There was a crowd, and Ridley wanted to see what the commotion was. It turned out there was a new kid, and he wore a black cloak with some chains, and he had blue hair that was natural that he didn't dye. When he walked, he was hot angsty, and he had a bad... When someone asked him what his name was, he said it was Cervantes. Cervantes! Ridley engraved in stone. It was a name he never knew, but he would never forget. You see, there was a problem that was right around the corner, and Ridley could not bargain for the future. Samus was on a chair, being angsty, and Cervantes thought that she was her type. He sat down next to her and began to woo her with his color. Hello, Cervantes began. Hi, returned Samus. You look very beautiful, and you're angsty, Cervantes related. I'll see you around. Samus was amazed by this man. He thought he was beautiful, and they just met. But was angsty good? No. Yes, no, yes. No, yes. Samus was battling herself, and she almost missed the boat. She would think about this later, but not later, as she decided. The number 120 times. Inside her head, there was another battle. Samus against Dark Samus. Cholera against Samus. It was a battle that could not be broken, and no sergeant could explain the situation. It was too late. Too late. The number 120 times. After school was confronted by Ridley, who was anticipated. The day had been very long, and he was ready to make up for the problems that he had created. But was Samus? I'm sorry, Ridley apologized, to little effect. It's too late for love. Samus deflated his balloon. Ridley was out of his mind. But what are you talking about? He disillusioned. Ridley, I'm Cervantes' girlfriend now. Samus shocked the populace. Time stood still, but kept going for Ridley. This was impossible to comprehend. What the... But Samus, what about? But Ridley was cut off, because Cervantes came out of the door and dared with debonair. Goodbye, Samus ultimated, and Ridley was left alone in the cold. Too old. Too cold. The number 120 times. Departing from the script, Ridley, is something the matter? You were exhibiting signs. I mean, you were angry earlier, but now, my visor, I see. You seem upset.
I'm fine, lass. Carry on.
Okay.